I still remember the way Noah used to look at me, like every thought that fell out of my mouth was a spark he wanted to catch before it hit the ground. I could be ranting about a client who misspelled calendar for the fifth time or telling some pointless story about a stranger's dog on the subway, and he'd grin at me like I was performing stand-up comedy without realizing it. "God, you're dramatic," he'd say, nudging my knee under the table, eyes soft, teasing. "Cute, though." I'd swat at him like an annoyed cat, muttering something about being taken seriously, but inside, I melted every time. It was ridiculous how alive he made the boring stuff feel. Grocery shopping, late-night laundry, even those miserable rainy Tuesday mornings, he'd turn all of it into something warm. Something bright. Once, in the middle of Trader Joe's, he pulled me into a clumsy twirl by the freezer section and whispered, "Dance with me before I freeze to death." I almost dropped the bag of peas from laughing. We were never the quiet, elegant couple people envy. We were noisy affection, messy energy, childish jokes whispered at the wrong times. We'd tease until one of us snorted, argue about who stole whose hoodie, kiss in parking lots like teenagers who hadn't learned subtlety yet. Our love burned bright, quick, reckless, like a sparkler tracing feverish shapes in summer air. But I changed before he did. Or maybe I just noticed life changing around me. Friends got engaged, started talking mortgages, nurseries, 5-year plans. Work got heavier, mornings got shorter, and suddenly being carefree felt irresponsible, juvenile, like something I should have outgrown by now. And then one evening, everything shifted. We were out celebrating something small, his new project going well, I think, and he cracked a joke. Something harmless, stupid, the kind he always made. But we were at a table full of couples who spoke in calm tones, who drank wine instead of cocktails, who seemed so effortlessly adult. And when they laughed, I didn't. Later, at home, he followed me into the kitchen, still carrying the remnants of his smile. "Hey," he said lightly, "you okay? I didn't mean to embarrass you." The words were gentle. Too gentle. And I don't even know what snapped inside me. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe insecurity. Maybe envy. But my voice came out sharp enough to cut. "Not everything has to be so emotional with you, Noah. God, you're too sensitive. Can't you just grow up a little?" The silence that followed wasn't loud. It was soft. Soft in a way that scared me. His expression didn't crumble. It didn't twist. It just fell inward. Like someone had quietly turned down a dimmer switch inside him. The corners of his mouth flattened. His eyes cooled. He nodded once, barely perceptible. "Okay," he said. That was it. One word. But the way he said it felt like watching a door close in slow motion, quiet, inevitable, final. I thought we'd talk about it later, maybe laugh about how dramatic I'd been. I thought he'd wrap his arms around me the way he always did and tell me I was being ridiculous. I didn't realize that "okay" was the beginning of the distance. The moment the air between us shifted, almost imperceptibly, like a tiny fault line forming beneath our feet. I didn't know it yet, but that night was the last time I saw the version of him who reached for me without hesitation. And I was the one who told him to put his hands down. At first, I told myself nothing had changed. Noah still kissed my forehead before work. Still held the door for me. Still asked if I wanted the last slice of pizza even though he always did. On the surface, everything looked the same, like our life had been copied and pasted perfectly. But something in the air felt thinner. Hollowed out. He didn't tease me in the mornings anymore. He used to greet me half awake with some dramatic gasp like, "You survived another night? Incredible." Now it was just a soft morning, like the words were fragile and he didn't want to drop them. He still called me beautiful sometimes, but not the way he used to. No sly grin, no playful eyebrow raise, no mock serious tone like he was awarding me a trophy. Just a quiet, almost dutiful, "You look nice." That was when I felt the first pinch in my chest. But I didn't say anything. Because I'd asked for this, hadn't I? I'd wanted something more adult. More composed. More serious. So I convinced myself he was stressed. Busy. Tired. I told myself that people naturally settle down after the early chaos of love, that comfort wasn't supposed to sparkle the way infatuation did. But the small moments kept stacking up like tiny warnings I kept stepping over. Our texts used to be chaotic threads of memes, ridiculous hypotheticals, and him sending voice notes of him gasping dramatically because he forgot to eat lunch again. Now I'd send something funny and get LOL. Just 3 letters. Lowercase. Like a bare minimum emotion stripped down to its skeleton. I'd laugh at something on my phone and glance at him instinctively, ready to share the moment, but he no longer looked up out of habit. His gaze stayed steady on whatever he was doing, as if the part of him that used to instinctively reach for my joy had gone quiet. One night, standing under the hot water in the shower, I realized we hadn't had a stupid argument in weeks. Not a playful bicker, not a mock fight, not even a debate about whether cereal counts as soup. We used to argue because we liked hearing each other laugh in the middle of it. Now the silence between us felt like an unspoken treaty. Don't stir the water. Don't make waves. Don't wake anything up. A few days later, I tried to bring the old us back. We were watching some cliché romantic comedy, the kind we used to roast until one of us cried from laughing. I leaned into him slowly, like approaching skittish wildlife. Remember when we used to make fun of these scenes? I whispered. He smiled. Barely. Yeah, just that. No follow-up joke. No terrible impression of the lead actor. No playful nudge. And then the movie filled the room again, swallowing the rest of the moment whole. That was the first time I felt something close to fear. I realized then that this wasn't temporary. It wasn't stress. It wasn't a phase. It was something deeper shifting, something that had cracked quietly beneath us. He didn't stop loving me, at least not all at once. But he'd folded away the part of himself that used to love loudly. The part that used to meet me in the middle of everything. And I had no idea how to call him back. The realization didn't hit all at once. It came in little, barely noticeable pieces, like dust settling on a surface until suddenly you touch it and realize it's thick enough to write your name in. For weeks, I kept telling myself we were just evolving, becoming calmer, maturing, growing into the kind of couple who talked about insurance deductibles and weekend errands instead of which fictional character would win in a fistfight. That was normal, right? That was adulthood. Love settling into something steady, something sensible. But the truth was, nothing about it felt steady. It felt still. The kind of stillness you don't notice until you realize nothing has moved in a long, long time. We went out with friends one night, people who still joked loudly, still teased each other across the table, still smiled with their whole faces. And for a moment, I saw the old spark in Noah's eyes as he laughed at something someone said. The real laugh. The one that used to roll out of him effortlessly, warm and contagious. But as soon as we got into the car, his expression softened into something quieter. Not sad. Not upset. Just muted. Like he'd turned the dial back down because I was there. I stared at his profile in the dim glow of the dashboard lights, that quiet fear curling in my stomach. You've been quiet lately, I said lightly, as if the weight behind the words wasn't enough to crack the windshield. Just tired, he murmured, eyes fixed on the road. You used to joke more, I pressed, my voice too soft, too careful. He didn't sigh dramatically like he used to. Didn't make a joke. Didn't even glance at me. I guess I grew up, he said. Simple. Flat. Final. It felt like getting punched without warning. Like a delayed bruise forming under my ribs. I wanted to tell him I didn't mean it, those stupid words I threw at him that night. I wanted to say I missed him. I missed us. I missed the way he used to make even silence feel alive. But the apology stuck somewhere between my pride and my fear, lodging itself in a place I couldn't reach. So instead of saying what mattered, I crossed my arms and looked out the window, letting the streetlights flash over my reflection, a woman who looked a lot like me but felt strangely unfamiliar. When we got home, he kissed my forehead, murmured goodnight, and walked straight into the bedroom. No lingering touch. No teasing bite at my shoulder. No race you to the bed challenge like he used to. Just that quiet, controlled version of him. The one he thought I wanted. I stood alone in the kitchen long after he disappeared down the hallway, listening to the distant hum of the refrigerator and the faint murmur of water running in the bathroom. The house felt too still. Like even the walls were waiting for me to admit something I didn't want to say out loud. I missed who he used to be. and I was starting to realize I might never get him back. But I didn't know how to fix it. Didn't know if I could. Didn't know if he even wanted me to try. Life settled into a rhythm that didn't feel like living so much as maintaining. Wake up. Work. Dinner. A few polite words. Bed. Two people performing the outline of a relationship without filling in any of the color. Noah wasn't cold. If he were, maybe it would have been easier to understand what was happening. Instead, he was gentle, measured in ways that felt almost clinical. He smiled when he was supposed to. He touched me when I touched him first. He said, "I love you," only after I said it, like the words were obligations he didn't want to forget on his checklist. It wasn't rejection. It wasn't resentment. It was something far worse, carefulness. He was careful with me now, like someone who'd learned the exact temperature not to burn themselves. And I knew that I was the fire he'd learned to avoid. One morning, I watched him get ready for work, standing by the doorway like some ghost tethered to habit. His hair was still damp, his tie straightened with that perfect precision he never used to care about. He looked older, somehow not in years, but in weight. In restraint. And for the first time, I realized he didn't glance at the mirror to catch my reaction anymore. He used to do that, check his reflection not for himself, but for me, just to flash that goofy look like, "Damn, I clean up nice, huh?" Now he buttoned his cuffs with quiet efficiency, unaware or uninterested that I was studying every move. When he finally noticed me watching, he gave me a small, polite smile. "Something wrong?" "No," I said quickly. "You just look nice." "Thanks." That was it. No teasing. No playful, exaggerated hair flip. Just thanks. It hit me then, the painful, sinking truth that I had broken something I didn't know how to glue back together. Something I wasn't sure he'd even want repaired. So I tried. Little things at first. Sending him a meme I knew he'd once have made fun of. Brushing my hand against his at dinner. Saying something stupid on purpose just to bait out a laugh. Sometimes he smiled softly, briefly. But it always stopped there. He never added to the joke. Never pushed the moment further. Never reached for me the way he once did so effortlessly. It was like trying to coax a flame out of damp matches. One night, I decided to go all in. Candles. His favorite meal. The dress he used to say distracted him to the point of danger. I wanted to spark something, anything, that felt like us again. When he walked in, surprise flickered across his face, and my heart leapt like a desperate animal. "This looks great," he said, kissing my cheek gently. But dinner was quiet. Too quiet. I laughed too loudly at one point, trying to recapture an old rhythm, and immediately hated how forced it sounded, like a cracked violin string pretending to be whole. Afterward, on the couch, I leaned into him, trying to sync with his breathing, to feel closer. To feel chosen. "Noah," I whispered, "do you ever miss how we used to be?" He hesitated. I felt the pause ripple through him like a small earthquake. "Sometimes," he said finally. "But I think this is better." A beat. Feels more grown. All I heard was, feels more empty. But I smiled like it didn't split something inside me. Later, he fell asleep first. I lay awake, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, aching, to wake him and tell him I didn't want grown. I wanted us. I wanted him. I wanted the boy who used to love out loud. But my throat stayed tight. My hand hovered inches above his hair and never touched him. Because deep down I knew the truth. I asked him to change. And he did. Just not in the way I ever intended. And now I didn't know how to call him back from the version of himself I'd forced him to become. It didn't happen on a milestone day. No anniversary, no holiday, no spectacular fallout you could circle on a calendar. It was just a Tuesday. A plain, uneventful Tuesday, the kind of day you forget unless something inside you breaks quietly enough to echo forever. He was working late, hunched over his laptop at the dining table. His glasses sat low on his nose, catching the soft blue glow of the screen. He looked older. Not aged, but worn in a way I hadn't noticed before. Like something about carrying himself carefully, carrying us carefully, had added weight to his shoulders. I pretended to scroll my phone on the couch, pretending not to stare while doing nothing but stare. I kept waiting to see a spark of the old Noah in the lines of his face, in the absent-minded tapping of his fingers, in the little hums he used to make when he was deep in thought. But he didn't hum anymore. He didn't tap. He didn't fidget. He was still, too still. And I knew that stillness wasn't peace. It was discipline. Finally, the silence grew too loud. I set my phone down and forced my voice out, softer than I meant it to be. Noah, do you ever get tired of being so serious all the time? He blinked up at me confused. What do you mean? You don't flirt anymore, I whispered. You don't tease me. You don't joke around the way you used to. His eyes softened in a way that made my stomach twist. He wasn't hurt, he wasn't even surprised. He just said calmly, "You told me to stop." There was no malice in the words. No bitterness. Just fact. And somehow, that hurt more than if he'd yelled. I didn't mean it like that, I said, my voice shaking. I was mad and overwhelmed and... He closed his laptop slowly, carefully, like he was trying not to make a sound that would spook me. He leaned back in his chair, folding his hands loosely, watching me with that unreadable calm he'd mastered. You told me I was too sensitive, he said gently. That I needed to grow up. I swallowed hard. Yeah, but not like this. He offered a faint, almost apologetic smile. You said I made you embarrassed. That's not what I... But, even to me, the denial sounded desperate and thin. He exhaled, long and steady, then met my eyes with a softness that felt like a goodbye wearing a gentle disguise. I try to be who you wanted, he said. A man who didn't overreact. Who didn't make scenes. Who didn't wear his heart on his sleeve. I tried to grow up for you. His voice didn't shake. Mine did. But I think the version of me you loved, he continued quietly, can't exist in the version of me you asked for. It was said without accusation. Without anger. Without even sadness. Just acceptance. And acceptance was so much worse. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Every apology I'd rehearsed choked itself into silence. Because he was right. Because I didn't know how to ask for a middle ground when I'd shoved him so far to one side. He stood up, walked over, and pressed a soft kiss to the top of my head, gentle, distant, final. Then he walked into the bedroom without looking back. I sat alone at the table long after he was gone, listening to the candle flicker unevenly in the corner. The room felt enormous, hollow in a way that made my chest ache. That night was when I finally understood. Love doesn't always shatter loudly. Sometimes it just settles, grows quiet, and stops reaching for you the moment you convince it it's safer not to. It's strange how two people can share a space, share meals, routines, even a bed, and still feel miles apart. It's been almost a year since that night. A year of quiet mornings and quieter evenings. A year of living beside Noah instead of with him. We're still together, technically. We still function like a couple on paper. He kisses my cheek before work. He texts me when he gets home safe. He brings back the yogurt I like without being asked. He remembers my dentist appointments, my migraines, which brand of tea helps me sleep. He's good to me. Almost painfully good. But none of it feels like the way he used to love me, with all that messy, reckless affection that used to spill out of him uncontrollably. Now everything is careful, measured, almost muted. His touches are gentle, but they don't linger. His smiles are soft, but they don't reach his eyes. His words are kind, but they feel like acknowledgments, not emotions. He's become the version of a man who doesn't require anything from me. Not reassurance, not playfulness, not attention. Not joy. He lives in a quiet place inside himself now, a place I helped build without realizing what it cost. And me? I've become quieter, too. When you live in the shadow of something you destroyed, you learn not to make sudden moves. You learn to tiptoe around the bones of what used to be love. You learn that asking for more feels selfish when you were the one who asked for less. Sometimes, early in the morning, I catch him humming to himself while he makes coffee. Just a faint tune, one of those nonsense melodies he used to create purely to annoy me. And for a few precious seconds, I hear the boy he used to be. The boy who once handed me a crooked paper crown he made from a receipt and insisted I wear it while cooking. The boy who laughed so hard at his own jokes he could barely breathe. But as soon as he notices me in the doorway, the humming stops. Just ends. Like joy is something he's learned to tuck away when he's not alone. And the worst part? He's not doing it out of resentment. He's doing it out of habit. I used to think heartbreak was something that happened when someone left. When they slammed a door, or stopped answering, or walked out of your life in a dramatic, unforgettable flash. But now I understand that heartbreak can be quiet. It can lie beside you every night. It can say good morning and good night and still feel like a stranger wearing someone you used to love. Sometimes I lie awake next to him, listening to his breathing, steady, peaceful, untroubled. I inch closer slowly, careful not to wake him, and when he wraps an arm around me in his sleep, instinctive, unconscious, I hold my breath. Not out of fear he'll pull away, but out of fear the warmth will fade if I move even an inch. When he sleeps, I whisper things I never say when he's awake. I miss you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to break anything. I want you back, you. But he never stirs. Never hears me. Or maybe he does, somewhere inside the part of him I can't reach anymore. Every once in a while, the memory of the night I told him he was too sensitive flashes through my mind like a bad omen, a bruise pressed too hard. I replay it over and over, wishing I'd swallowed the words instead of spitting them out like something poisonous. Because now I know exactly what happened. He grew up. Just like I told him to. And now I'm the one who misses the boy he used to be.